and we have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Welcome to Gay USA. I'm Andy Hum.
I'm Ann Northrup, still enjoying that video intro many years after we put it up there.
And we hope you will enjoy this week's show where I understand Ann has about 20 good news stories. But we start off with one of them. A lesbian lawyer took down Donald Trump, who said neither she nor her client was his type.
It's definitely a good news story. And the next good news story is that the law is catching up with George Santos.
But on the negative side, Louisiana, Florida, Iowa, and North Dakota, and some other states have advanced anti-LGBTQ bills.
There was a big telethon this weekend where stars came out to raise big bucks to fight against anti-drag legislation.
And to support people who do drag and are transgender. An out bisexual legislator in Nebraska has left the Democratic Party to be an independent.
It's a very interesting explanation. We'll discuss that. There have been arrests in the murders of trans women in Houston and Atlanta.
We'll give you the gay angles on the Pulitzer Prizes.
And Andy will review 2 gay-themed plays that have been imported from England.
So how about that Robbie Kaplan?
Heroin, yet again.
Huh?
Yet again, Robbie Kaplan is a heroine after leading Edie Windsor to victory in her marriage rights case at the Supreme Court some years ago. She took on E. Jean Carroll as a client in her civil case against Donald Trump for rape, sexual assault, defamation, and a whole load of others. The only one she didn't win was rape because E. Jean said she couldn't be absolutely sure that he penetrated her. And
with his penis.
Exactly.
As opposed to his finger, because don't forget he's the grab him by the genitals guy.
It's a family show, Andy.
I said by not using the bad word.
They found him liable on every other count, starting with sexual assault and going to defamation and a lot of other counts. And the jury of 6 men, including at least 1 MAGA man, and 3 women, awarded her a total of $5 million in damages.
No, of course, Trump really didn't show up for the trial, but in his deposition, he testified against himself. And you've seen this repeatedly on the news. But one of the things he said was, this woman, E. Jean Carroll, is not my type. And you wouldn't be a choice of mine either, he said to Roberta Kaplan.
Well, let's show the picture of E. Jean and Roberta. And in the back there is our friend Robert Kroonquist, member of Rise and Resist, holding up a Lori Arbiter constructed sign, "We believe E. Jean Carroll." But Robbie on the right, E. Jean in the middle, and I guess the guy on the left is another lawyer, I'm guessing. I would like to ask Robbie how much restraint she had to exercise not to say to Donald Trump at that moment, and you would not be my choice either, Donald.
Well, she did tell the jury at the end, Trump, he is a witness against himself, which he was. But, right before the trial, we've got polls showing Trump and DeSantis ahead of Biden. That's very concerning, but neither is it more than 44%. We don't have polls post this judgment. The problem in this country, of course, is when people are unhappy, and people are unhappy for a lot of reasons these days, they tend to want to vote for change. But, the way Republicans have reacted to this verdict in this case, most of them, except for Asa Hutchinson, who's running for president, who condemns Trump. It really puts the lie to the Republican concern for women in changing rooms.
Exactly. They specialize in hypocrisy. That's the first plank of their platform. But there were some shocking statements, like the guy who said, "This just makes me want to vote for Trump twice."
Tommy Tuberville, completely brain dead senator from Alabama.
Yeah. But really, really, really proud of Robbie Kaplan for pulling this off. This has been going on for a couple of years, I think, since this case was first filed. And no one had a lot of hope that E. Jean would win this, I don't think. You're looking quizzical, like you don't necessarily agree with that. But I don't think people saw Trump, as vulnerable to a lawsuit about something that happened 25 years ago. And I think people are just thrilled that she won, and that Robbie did such a great job of, she was asked in an interview I saw this morning about, they showed that clip of his deposition and him saying, him looking at the picture and misidentifying E. Jean as his wife, Marla. And the interviewer said to Robbie, "Is that the moment when you knew you had him?" And she said, "Absolutely. That was exactly it." And the fact that she just like a surgeon picked out those moments was
And
great.
let's not forget the women who stood by E. Jean Carroll.
Yes.
Her best friend, who testified that she told me within a few minutes of what happened. And another woman who was sexually assaulted by Trump on a plane. And, and of course, again, Trump was the witness against himself and what he said about, grabbing them and grabbing women, where he basically said, that's been true throughout history, fortunately or unfortunately, that you can do that and get away.
What a guy.
Well, I mean, it was so, when he's not under the control of his handlers, where he had to say that, that was just locker room talk. It's not locker room talk. It's what he believes.
Yeah.
And what he does.
Very, very satisfying. And I look forward to more convictions and findings of liability for him.
Now, we're hoping the Justice Department has got stuff on Trump that they're going to get to fairly quickly, but they did finally file federal charges against George Santos from the public integrity section. It's 7 counts of wire fraud, 3 counts of money laundering, and 1 count of theft of public funds. While he had a $100,000+ job, he was collecting unemployment. That's stealing. Santos railed against those receiving unemployment benefits as preventing businesses from getting going again. Everybody's on unemployment. But of course, he was taking it illegally himself.
He's one of those people about whom you say, how do you know he's lying? His lips are moving.
Well, this was the week also that he called for lesbian, gay, and bisexual people to divorce from TQIA+ people.
There's been a lot of upset talk over the last few years, or ever since Biden took office, about the Justice Department isn't moving fast enough. They're not going after these people enough. What's wrong with them? They're too slow. They're not accumulating evidence there. Why aren't they prosecuting George Santos? But I have to say that just pure speculation on my part, but related to those polls you were referring to earlier, I think the timing is exquisite on all of this. I think coming at this point, a year and a quarter before the next election, these are all going to play out for the next year, the trials and everything. More and more evidence is going to come out. That poll, by the way, the Washington Post ABC poll, is now being described as an outlier. People are, I don't know if that's wishful thinking, but you see Biden is out talking more. So I think there's a slow accumulating trajectory toward the more progressive side. And I think Trump is sinking like a stone, and so is DeSantis.
Okay, I'll be able to sleep tonight. All right, should we go to the states?
Sure.
Well, let's go to Indiana, where Governor Eric Holcomb signed a Don't Say Gay bill that forces teachers to report trans kids to their parents if they ask to be called by a new pronoun, title, or word. It bans discrimination of human sexuality throughout the, discussion of human sexuality through the 3rd grade, which is how Florida got started before extending it through the 12th. The ACLU says the law could be used to silence any mention of LGBTQ people in schools, ban books with LGBTQ characters, fire LGBTQ teachers, and bar pride flags in classrooms.
And in Florida, there are several bills and stories from Florida. The legislature has passed a no trans in bathrooms bill, expanded the Don't Say Gay bill through 12th grade, said that doctors and insurers can deny care to anybody on the grounds of their, values. And where was I?
Well, they've just said that a person's sex is sorry.
If they find a child who is being given care as a trans child, they can take them away. The state can take them away from their parents and put them under the care of the state health department. So they want to kidnap children.
The bill says that it shall be the policy of every public school that, quote, a person's sex is an immutable biological trait and that it is false to ascribe to a person a pronoun that does not correspond to such person's sex. It makes it easier to object to books and curricula in schools, banning them until they're, you can get them banned prior to them even being reviewed.
Yes, and they are also banning diversity, equity, and inclusion education or even mention in colleges and universities. And
they banned live performances such as drag shows.
And no mention of LGBTQ people in classrooms anywhere.
And the Florida Department of Education approved dozens of social studies textbooks, but only after publishers had to edit them so that there was so they wouldn't have run afoul of all the censorship measures that have been put into place.
Now, it's not quite the Handmaid's Tale yet. 8 mayors in Florida signed a pledge of support for LGBTQ youth. How they will put that into practice is yet to be determined, but some people are standing up.
And the Miami Grand Prix was this past weekend, and Formula One driver Lewis Hamilton, we have a picture of him, for this race wore a rainbow helmet in that Grand Prix in Miami to stand with Florida's LGBTQ community. He's 4th in the international rankings. He finished 6th in this race. DeSantis's press secretary said, the British have no say over us anymore. Dumb. Oh, speaking of Florida, Andrew Gillum, who lost to DeSantis in 2018, was acquitted of lying to the FBI in a federal case and a mistrial on fraud charges over how he raised political funds. Again, he's an open bisexual now.
Yeah, who was arrested in a hotel room on Miami Beach with drugs and alcohol and naked men. And
well, he wasn't convicted.
No, but he wasn't a strong candidate against DeSantis either. When DeSantis,
he almost won that race. Anyway, should we go to Texas?
No, I think we go to Montana for a good news story.
Okay.
Our pal Representative Zoe Zephyr, the out trans member of the legislature who has been so abused by the vindictive, nasty Republican majority, had a nice moment last week. She proposed to her girlfriend, journalist Erin Reed. That's Erin on the left and Zoe kneeling in front of her and asking her to marry her.
Well, let's go to Texas. We told you about Texas last week about the anti-trans legislation being passed by the Republicans. Here is the video of Equality Texas unfurling a banner, "Let trans kids grow up." Do we have that? So that dramatic gesture got the group's advocacy manager, Sophia, banned from the Capitol building for an entire year for her protest. Now, they're still fighting a bill barring drag shows as we tape today. It says you can't have any sexually oriented performances. What about the Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders, for God's sakes? And a lesbian bar says they can't even get insurance now if they host drag shows because the underwriters won't sign their policies.
Well, all these bills about not discussing sexual orientation and gender are certainly not being enforced against heterosexuals who are wearing wedding rings and referring to their spouses in classrooms or dating or anything else. It's all very one-sided.
Well, a viewer wrote to us and said, why don't we have women dress up the way drag queens do, and when they go to public events, and when they get arrested, we can undermine the law.
I'd rather see them circulate the pictures of trans men in facial hair, very macho outfits, and say, is this really who you want in the ladies' restroom?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
A little good news moment from Texas. 5 LGBTQ plus men, I think, were elected to city councils in Dallas, San Antonio, Brownsville, and Pasadena, Texas. I didn't know there was a Pasadena, Texas.
But staying in the States, North Dakota Republican Governor Doug Burgum signed 3 new anti-trans laws, barring schools from using chosen pronouns, bars trans students from restrooms consistent with gender identity. No trans person can update a birth certificate or other government document, and erases LGBTQ people. This is the new thing, erases us from multiple areas of state law, barring discrimination claims based on sexual orientation and gender identity. This guy signed a total of 11 anti-LGBTQ bills. Well, what else are they doing there?
Well, but that's the point. They are not doing anything else. They are doing this to try to anger and scare their constituents into voting them back into office while avoiding all the real issues that they have no answers to.
Nationally, polling is against what they're doing, but they're doing it anyway.
But yes, and the polling may be against it, but when it comes to the voting booth, people are putting them back into office.
Right.
Wait, I had something. Oh, forget it. This ruling out of non-discrimination claims. This is because we don't have the Equality Act. We have no federal protection other than the one case that the Supreme Court decided, which states are now ignoring or finding ways to disagree with. And so we're back to no protections for discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation or gender identity.
Well, don't underestimate how the Bostock decision can be used. In most employment cases, it can be used because the Supreme Court has said that it is sex discrimination when you discriminate on the basis of sexual orientation or gender identity. So that can be a powerful tool.
Well, I agree. It can be, but I know that states are now twisting themselves into knots to reinterpret it and declare on their own that sex discrimination does not refer to gender identity discrimination or sexual orientation discrimination. And that may have to go back up to the Supreme Court in cases from these states to adjudicate that because they want to just ignore anything they don't like.
Yes. Well, going back to Montana, they did pass their LGBTQ plus Erasure Act, barring such discrimination complaints on the basis of sexual orientation and gender identity, and also requires government records to list sex based on eggs or sperm rather than gender identity.
And bans drag in front of minors.
Alabama has a bill advanced to ban trans college students from school sports consistent with gender identity. Oklahoma banned gender-affirming care for youth, and Tennessee made it more difficult to access sex education.
And in Oregon, Republican senators are in the minority in the state Senate, but they are boycotting the Senate sessions because if they're not there, the Senate cannot achieve a quorum, which is, I guess, a little more than a majority. So the Republican senators cannot pass a bill because they are in the minority, but they can block the Democrats by just not showing up for these sessions.
Democracy is crumbling. In Oklahoma, the Republican governor Stitt vetoed funding for the local PBS, Oklahoma Educational TV, because he says it's indoctrinating and sexualizing kids. He went after LGBTQ pride programming, Clifford the Big Red Dog, and Work It Out Wombats as subversive, and the PBS NewsHour because it covers trans issues.
Let's take a little detour to Missouri, Nebraska, where Senator Megan Hunt, who we've talked about several times on this show, as the mother of a trans child who has joined the filibuster against anti-trans legislation in Missouri and has been accused of being biased because of that for her trouble. And she has now announced that she is leaving the Democratic Party and becoming an independent because she is tired of the Democrats not doing enough to stand up for the same values she has and not putting their weight behind anything progressive. And she says, I'm just sick of it. I'm sick of these back and forth, and I'm going independent.
Well, she says they don't support liberal candidates in conservative-dominated states, and that both parties are ideologically bankrupt. I thought of you when she said that about journalism. Yes. She says her own politics remain progressive left, and AOC, by the way, called her very brave for what she's doing.
Well, we've talked for years about how you have to pick a side to have any power in the United States in politics. But I think if we're going to make any change to that, we have to start somewhere. And I applaud her intellectual non-bankruptcy by analyzing this and deciding that's what she had to do.
Yet we're not enamored
putting pressure on the Democratic Party.
We're not enamored of Kirsten Sinema and her.
No. We like Angus King, who's an independent.
Bernie Sanders.
Bernie Sanders is an independent. And I think he's right about the Democratic Party only doing the safe thing, only supporting candidates that they really are convinced can win or issues, and to put pressure on the Democratic Party to be a little more courageous and a little more forward thinking, a little more aggressive about going after tougher races, I think is a good thing.
Okay. Well, in Pennsylvania, the House moved a bill banning discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity. And on Tuesday, they're going to have a special election in the Delaware County 163rd District, which will determine which party controls the House.
Yes.
It's very, very close there.
Very scary.
Very scary.
But meanwhile, the Philadelphia Gay News in Philadelphia has endorsed Cheryl Parker for mayor of Philadelphia, and that's a very tight race that's being run there.
I do have that, but yeah, there she is. And believe me, it's a very large field. The Philadelphia Gay News just said, we think she's got the longest and strongest record. I'm going to link to the endorsements for all the candidates so you can make up your own mind.
Okay. And the Pennsylvania House has passed the Fairness Act, which is a non-discrimination bill for sexual orientation and gender identity. And this, with the help of two Republicans in a vote of 102 to 98, this is the first time in the 47 years this has been an issue there that this bill has passed either house of the Pennsylvania legislature.
Pardon my ignorance, but we have a Democratic governor who obviously supports it. On the Senate, no chance?
No, we control both houses in Pennsylvania now for the first time in a very, very, very long time.
Sorry, we shall see.
And that's why the special election seat is so important, because these houses are so close, and we need to pass this bill through the Senate maybe before the special election.
Okay, let's talk about something wonderful that happened this week. There was a telethon in LA called "Drag Isn't Dangerous," a digital fundraiser, and it raised over $500,000, which is being raised for actually directly to help trans people and charities supporting out-of-work drag artists and transgender people. That's mainly what it's for, and to fight. It's in the wake of all this anti-LGBTQ legislation, especially anti-trans legislation. A film made during the telethon made the point that thousands of children have been molested by clergy and counselors, and no legislation has been enacted against them.
Very, very little. There were a lot of, or a substantial number of stars on the telethon, including Melissa McCarthy, Idina Menzel, Leslie Jones, Charlize Theron, Jesse Eisenberg, and Sarah Hyland. Right. But one in particular stood out.
Marcia Gay Harden, she's 63. She's an Oscar winner for playing Lee Krasner in the movie Pollock, about Jackson Pollock and Lee Krasner. She was there. She said, "What drives me is my children are all queer. My eldest is non-binary. My son is gay. My youngest is fluid. They teach me every day."
And she said, "Bad laws are fear-based, spreading fear and hatred. I believe this country will fight that."
Well, speaking of what we need to fight, in Texas, the wicked Attorney General, Ken Paxton, there is going after Austin's Children's Hospital to determine whether they're unlawfully providing gender-affirming care to minors. The hospital prohibits surgery, of course, for trans minors, and does not provide gender blocks there for kids, but he's after them.
And we wonder where some of this campaign is coming from to attack trans people and drag shows and everything. There's a very interesting news item in the last week or two. The American College of Pediatricians, which is a right-wing Christian hate group aligned with the Alliance Defending Freedom, mistakenly revealed some of its own files. 10,000 files were hacked by themselves, I think. And what it did was it confirmed that they are running a vicious hate campaign against LGBTQ people. They are behind a lot of this. And because they have labeled themselves the American College of Pediatricians, even though they are very tiny, they can go out and very loudly claim to be experts on what trans youth care is doing to those kids, and claiming that it's harmful. And just by asserting their name, they get credibility, when in fact they are nothing but a tiny hate group. And so all these files that were released talked about how they are running these campaigns and the way they are approaching this. And they say, for instance, treat LGBTQ youth as mentally ill. This is one of their planks, one of their strategies for how to disqualify trans kids from legitimacy. They're also fighting abortion very strongly, but they just revealed them. It's like Donald Trump testifying against himself. They have revealed themselves as nothing but a hate-filled lobby group.
They're succeeding in Louisiana. The House there passed a Don't Say Gay bill, banning teachers K through 12 from talking about LGBTQ issues or people. No discussion of sexual orientation or gender identity in classrooms, extracurricular activities, or athletics. Does that mean you can't use anti-gay slurs in sports? That would be over. And what about gay to straight alliances? They're supposed to be protected by federal law. Are they going to be stopped?
Anti-gay slurs in sports are the subject of this week's Ted Lasso episode, and they did a very, very good job with it.
Okay.
So I recommend.
All right, in Virginia, Governor Youngkin's chief diversity. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. I want to go to Texas first. In Texas, Republican lawmaker Brian Slayton, Salaton, who attacked drag shows as sexualizing kids, pushed all this anti-LGBTQ legislation to protect the innocence of children, has resigned after being found to have engaged in a sexual relationship with a 19-year-old intern who he plied with alcohol and demanded silence of. She apparently lost her virginity to him, so much for innocence. But the Texas House, within the last 24 hours, expelled him from the House, which is like a worse sanction than resigning. The first time they've done that to anybody since 1927, and it was a unanimous vote.
I guess he's not popular among his colleagues.
And I wonder if any of these Texas Republicans are abandoning Trump.
We shall see, as they say. I mean, Greg Abbott has been so hateful on gun massacres. It's hard to imagine that they're going to really back down from Trump or anyone else like that. But that's good that Slayton lost his seat. And as you were about to say, in Virginia, the state has a chief diversity officer named Martin Brown. And he was giving a speech at the Citadel?
Yep. No, VMI.
VMI, thank you. Virginia Military Institute. And he gets up, and he's the chief diversity officer, and he gets up and he gives this whole speech about how diversity, equity, and inclusion is dead. We're having no more of that. We're just going to rely on people to be nice to each other.
Now, it turns out Brown was under a previous Republican governor, Bob McConnell, served as director of social services, and there urged his agency in 2011, to ban adoptions by same-sex couples. Now, former Governor Doug Wilder, the first Black governor in the nation, joined the NAACP in calling for this guy's removal.
Yeah, so we'll see if he goes the way of Representative Slayton in Texas. Don't you think these people are just revealing themselves too much these days, and it's all coming back to bite them? I think people will be empowered by the verdict against Trump. I think the emperor's nudity is revealing itself.
So, well, the Proud Boys have been exposed, including their leader, Enrique Tarrio. They were convicted of federal charges of seditious conspiracy for leading the violent January 6th coup attempt. Now, this is one of the main groups protesting drag events across the country. The trial exposed group chats that were a toxic stew of machismo, homophobia, and misogyny, casual anti-Semitism, and sympathy for Nazism. They face up to 20 years in prison for their crimes. Of course, if Trump gets back in, he's going to pardon them all.
Exactly.
He's now using the January 6th prison choir in his rallies. It's
been revealed that one of the Proud Boys' inspirations is that woman, Chaya Raychek, who is the Libs of TikTok founder. And she is a monster who is spreading mayhem and hatred and exclusion all over the country. And she has inspired racist and Nazi the mall killer in Texas. He specifically referred to her as an inspiration of his.
He was covered with swastika tattoos. Yeah. Mauricio Garcia there.
So you hear about things like the Libs of TikTok, and you watch them do stuff around the country, particularly places like Florida. But this is a whole nother level when she is inspiring murderers to massacre people at a mall. Now, I'm sure she didn't set out to do that, but the point is her rhetoric is such that it is inflammatory to a high degree.
In Orlando, the One Pulse Foundation will not be able to build a memorial to the 49 lives taken at the Pulse nightclub massacre of 2016 on the site of the club because the owner, Barbara Poma, won't sell. She won't say why, so they're looking for another site. Poma was a founder of the foundation, stepped down from the board last month. She had once been its executive director.
In Chicago, a bunch of gay bars have decided to stop selling Bud Light. Now you would say, well, why? They did the trans model on the beer can. Why would the gay bars stop selling it? Because Bud Light didn't defend their doing that, and they're caving to the right wing, and getting rid of their personnel who put together that campaign. Now the gay bars are getting a lot of pushback from the right wing, who are making threats against them. So the right wing, who criticized the campaign in the first place, are now defending Bud Light by attacking the gay bars, and the gay bars are attacking Bud Light, which originally did the campaign.
And I just read that in Canada, a straight couple was buying some Bud Light, and they were attacked by whatever the equivalent of MAGA is up there, physically attacked for buying the beer. And
then it turned out it wasn't Bud Light. They mistook the thing.
It's insane. All right.
It is all insane. And the San Francisco Pride Parade has dropped Dee Snider of Twisted Sister from their celebration because he has published some anti-trans screeds, and now he's all upset that he's being canceled because he's a bigot.
Well, let's talk about some real crimes. In Houston, we told you about the shooting death of trans woman Maricela Castro, 39, last July. She was found lying in a roadway. A suspect has finally been arrested, Oscar Ariel Sierra, 18 years old, charged with capital murder. A second suspect, 16, was also arrested and referred to juvenile authorities.
And in Atlanta, first in New York.
Right down the block.
Yeah. A 14-year-old boy viciously beaten by a gang of guys who it seems he might have known. This is a gang that has been pursuing him and harassing him for a while. Well, they caught him on the street and they gay bashed the heck out of him.
Now, this picture is of one of the alleged perpetrators.
Yeah.
Who the police are trying to find.
Exactly.
5'9", thin build, dark eyes and hair, believed to reside in New Jersey. If you can help, call 1-800-577-TIPS.
And also in New York, a couple of weeks ago, we told you about a pride flag that was set on fire by a woman in Soho, and that she was found unfit to stand trial for the hate crime. I see. I screwed something up earlier. She is the one who is now in the custody of the health department in New York, not Florida trans kids.
Right.
So she is in the custody of the New York City Health Department.
We told you about the murder of Coco Dadal in Atlanta, the Black trans woman and star of the documentary that won all the Sundance Prizes, Kokomo City. She was killed on April 18th. The police have a 17-year-old suspect, Jermarcus Jernigan. He saw himself on the news and told his mother that he couldn't do something like that. He turned himself in, but he was charged with murder because the murder was caught on video.
In New Mexico, a trans woman, Austin Killips, won a cycling race, the Tour of the Gila, and she's under a lot of attack for being a trans woman in sports. And the United Cycling Institute, or UCI, I'm sorry, I'm probably screwing up those initials, had tightened its testosterone levels. She had qualified under the tightened rules, but they may now move to banning trans participants or trans women from the sport altogether, which would be unfortunate.
Okay. Shall we talk about so we talk about the Pulitzer Prizes?
Almost. Can we? There was something else I wanted to get to first. Sorry. In Disney and DeSantis are going back and forth with competing lawsuits. They're escalating on both sides. And one of our viewers sent us a cute little picture. It's of a character from the old Disney Fantasia movie. On the left are actual pictures of a female and male ostrich. You see that the male on the right has more colorful plumage, as is common in nature among birds. The males trying to attract females. But then on the right, you see the Disney character from Fantasia, which is Mademoiselle Upanova, who is supposed to be a female character, but is clearly, according to these pictures, a male ostrich in drag.
All right. Well, I hope Ron DeSantis doesn't hear about this.
This was 1940. I guess Disney was lucky to be able to build Disney World in Florida in the first place.
Ronald Reagan was hosting drag shows in the movies in those days.
Yeah. And the good news for Maryland is that they have passed a bill to protect access to trans care for youth. Now we can go on to prizes.
Well, the winner of the Poetry Prize for Pulitzer was Carl Phillips, 63, a professor of English at Washington University in St. Louis and an out gay man. He won for his masterful collection that chronicles American culture as the country struggles to make sense of politics, of life in the wake of the pandemic, and our place in the changing global community. Sounds just like what we do here at Gay USA. The collection is titled Then the War, and was cited for entering deeper into the landscape he has made his own, a forest of intimacy, queerness, and moral inquiry. Where the farther we go, the more difficult it is to remember why or where it started.
And the Pulitzer for music went to Michael Abels, who with Rhiannon Giddens wrote the opera Omar, which is an opera with Muslim themes and characters.
It's his first opera. He usually does movie music for Jordan Peele's movies.
Yes. So another gay Pulitzer winner. And I just want to mention a couple of our major organizational executive directors are moving on. Joey Presley, who's been leading HMI for several years as CEO, has a new job. He's done a great job at HMI. And Esther McGowan is leaving visual aids after 10 years for a new position. And their big event, Va Va Voom, is May 15th in just a few days. If you want to support her and them, go to visual aids and find out the details.
Okay. International news?
Yes.
Well, very sad to read about the death of David Miranda in Rio de Janeiro. That's him with the beard in the front there with his husband, Glenn Greenwald, and their kids. He's only 37 years old. He's a Brazilian lawmaker. He has died at the age of 37 after battling a severe infection for almost a year in the ICU. Now, he was elected to Brazil's federal Congress in 2019. He was the first out gay city councilor in 2016 with Marielle Franco, who was assassinated. And he's always lived under death threats. He replaced a legislator who left the country because he was getting so many death threats. And David used to get death threats all the time. They had to live in kind of an armed camp. Lula da Silva, the Socialist and Freedom Party leader of Brazil, said he was a young man with an extraordinary trajectory and left us too soon.
Tragedy. In South Korea, the Seoul government has blocked the annual LGBT festival there, which has taken place for a few years, they assigned their space outside City Hall to a Christian youth festival. And that's been the big battle in South Korea for years, is the evangelical Christians against the LGBT. So this one goes to the Christians.
In Saudi Arabia, the penalty for homosexuality is death by beheading. But the Saudi Tourism Authority posted about whether LGBTQ tourists can visit. Everyone is welcome to visit Saudi Arabia, it says, and visitors are not asked to disclose their personal details.
Please.
It sounds like a trap.
Yes, watch out. Right-wing activity is going on still in Hungary. CPAC is back meeting there, and Orban is attacking the left. Turkey is about to have an election, and Erdogan is attacking us. We are, again, the scapegoats all over.
Well, he's saying that his opponent is pro-LGBTQ.
Yeah, we are the linchpin for all their.
In Poland, an appeals court threw out a case against 4 LGBTQ activists who founded something called the Atlas of Hate, where they made a map and showed you where all the anti-gay municipal laws were across the country. And the municipality said, "You're defaming us." They said, "We're not defaming you. We're reporting on you." And
you labeled yourselves LGBT-free zones, and we are just mapping those zones.
Right.
So they tried to sue them and lost. In Brussels, the European Union Parliament building has an art exhibit, and it includes a photograph by a well-known Swedish lesbian photographer, Elizabeth Olsen, of Jesus with Leathermen around him. This is viewable only inside the building by employees and special guests. Nonetheless, everyone is up in arms against it.
Well, the right wing is, but of course, if you put up a picture of Jesus being tortured to death in a crucifixion scene, they'd be fine with that. And he'd be half naked to boot. Yeah. And I'm not trying to mock that. I'm just saying, would you please think about, is this showing a loving scene? Jesus welcomed everybody, supposedly, even tax collectors.
So did you watch the coronation of Charles and Camilla at all?
I did, I must say. Well, actually, I'll tell you what, it was so boring that I mostly was reading the paper while it was on, because what's there to watch? It's not like he gives an inauguration speech. He doesn't give an inauguration speech.
I think I gave 10 seconds to it, but that was on Saturday. Sunday, they had the coronation concert, and 2 of the stars who appeared at the concert were Katy Perry and Lionel Richie, who are now judges on American Idol. So the king and queen returned the favor. They made an appearance on American Idol. They showed up. The American Idol show was on Sunday night here in the United States. And Katie and Lionel said, "Oh, we have some special guests with us." And in walk the king and queen of England, who chum it up with these 2 for a couple of minutes and then drift off again. It was hilarious.
Wow. Now, we've been telling you that the Indian Supreme Court is working its way through the marriage equality cases. The government of India, under Modi, right wing, they're not happy about it, but the government has created a committee to examine the needs of same-sex couples as the case is weighed. All right. AIDS news?
Yes. First, there's a study out of Australia that says gonorrhea can be spread by deep kissing, or as they said, sloppy kissing.
Tongue kissing.
Yeah.
You can move it from mouth to mouth, so watch out.
Yes.
Mostly spread, of course, by anal sex, vaginal sex, and oral sex. New York City, has declared an end to the Mpox outbreak in February after months of minimal spread, and no new cases have been reported since March 17th here. But the state health department is encouraging those at risk, transmitted primarily through sexual contact, to still get vaccinated, especially the 102,000 people who got 1 dose but not their second shot. You're supposed to get 2 shots, one with after 4 weeks. Now, Chicago has seen 7 cases since April 17th, and there could be more outbreaks elsewhere where vaccinations are low. So the campaign is pushing shots, especially as the warmer months are upon us.
I think Europe has some rising caseloads too. So think about getting your Mpox vaccines. Terrible news from a court. AIDS activists put together a lawsuit a few years ago against Gilead, the pharmaceutical company, saying that Gilead was infringing on patents for Truvada because the government had financed the research on Truvada's use as PrEP, pre-exposure prophylaxis, that quite a few people are on now. And the activists and the government said, you're making billions off this, and some of that should be coming to us because we financed it. And the court said no. They turned down the government and the AIDS activists and said Gilead is entitled to all the profits from this drug. So I don't know if the government's going to appeal that, but that is a really sad decision.
You saw that Dr. Rachel Walensky, stepping down as head of the CDC on June 30th, said to be wary of harassment from the public, among other things, and the long commute from her home in Massachusetts to the CDC in Atlanta. Why didn't you move to Atlanta? Also points to our broken health system, though morale was said to improve somewhat under her. Not clear who will replace her.
Yeah. And,
the COVID epidemic has been declared over. 7 million deaths later, over 1 million in the United States. Congress is putting up no new money for it. We're setting ourselves up for the next outbreak of something. It's just terrible.
I've heard a number of reports from friends who are still getting COVID and having a tough time with it.
1,000 people in America die every week from COVID, and you're all acting like it's over. Now, Biden is spending $5 billion that he didn't get from Congress, it's leftover funds, on the next generation vaccines and treatments.
Well, on that happy note, shall we go to entertainment news?
Yeah. Have you been watching Jeopardy at all?
Yeah. Yes, I have. And I have seen this new champion, who is Hannah Wilson, a trans woman. She now joins Amy Schneider as successful trans female contestants on Jeopardy. She also says, Amy Schneider outed me by congratulating me on Twitter or something. She's a data scientist from Chicago, and she's very amiable and very successful on Jeopardy.
Well, she racked up the highest 2-day total of the season. And on the Masters tournament, which is on in the primetime, out trans Amy Schneider is in competition without lesbian Matea Roach.
Matea Roach won one of the competitions last night. Right. But Amy has not triumphed yet.
The Cannes Film Festival is getting underway on May 16th, and Pedro Almodovar's entry is a short film, a Western in English called Strange Way of Life, starring Ethan Hawke there and Pedro Pascal, who is everywhere. It's about the reunion of 2 cowboys who worked together as hired gunmen 25 years ago.
We've mentioned that to you, but Cannes is finally starting, and we wanted to show you that picture. So there it is. I don't know when or where this is going to be available to see because it's a 20-minute film, but we'll keep our eyes open for that. And Hannah Gadsby has a new special on Netflix. It's called Hannah Gadsby Something Special. I think this is the show I saw her do at the Brooklyn Academy of Music last year. It's about her relationship a lot. It's not quite as sharp or funny as Nanette, but it's really good. I really enjoyed it and certainly worth checking out on Netflix.
The New York Drama Critics Award for Best Play went to Bruce Norris's Downstate, which we saw, about people on the sex offense registry living in a group home, including some gay ones. Best Foreign Play went to Tom Stoppard's Leopoldstadt saga about a Viennese family who lives through most of the 20th century, including the Holocaust, or many don't live. No, they made no award for Best Musical this year, and I
saw that.
can see why.
For fans of the show Noah's Ark, it is coming back. It's about 4 Black gay men in LA. It originally aired 2006 to 2007 on Logo. I'm not sure where it's going to air this time. It was a film. They made a film version in 2008. That's 15 years ago. They did a special a couple of years ago, and now it's going to return this year as back to being a TV show.
I'm going to the Brits Off-Broadway series at 5090 59th Street Theaters, 2 jolly good imports. There's a very welcome revival of Alan Bennett's The Habit of Art, about a theater company doing a play about a 1972 reunion of the poet W.H. Auden, there on the left, and composer Benjamin Britten, both gay men who were out well before Stonewall. And while the play deals candidly and humorously with their sexuality, including a visit from a rent boy to Auden's home, it's in the main a very bracing look at the creative process. Matthew Kelly there is hilarious as the actor playing the shambolic Auden, and Stephen Boxer, a dignified counterweight, as the actor playing Britain seeking help with his new opera, Death in Venice. It's got a first-class supporting cast, directed by Philip Franks, 2 hours of thoughtful fun. It runs through the 28th of May. And then Richard Sterling is giving us, I think, a real gem of a show, Cecil Beaton's Diaries, drawing directly from the writings of the famous photographer and designer for film and theater. It's a brisk hour and 15 minutes. He takes us through a good part of the 20th century, trenchant observations on luminaries he's worked with, befriended, or feuded with, including Garbo, Olivier, Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, Condé Nast, Marilyn Monroe, Burton and Taylor, Stephen Tennant, and other bright young things of his youth, and of course, the cast of My Fair Lady film and stage. He was also a very good war photographer, an excellent one, and he tells us about the men he loved or longed for. His motto was, be daring, be different, be impractical.
The Leslie Lohman Museum of Art here in New York on Worcester Street between Grand and Canal has a new facade exhibit. They have big windows on a corner of the street, and they put up great photographs or art or whatever on the outside, so you can just go look at it from the outside. This one's called Oceanic Portal, and it navigates the losses of people and places. It has 3D video, it has photos, and augmented reality. And they're having an official opening this Saturday at 4 p.m., but it's up already on the facade. And that is it for us this week.
Nice to see you, Ann. We'll have Rob Shooter here next week.
Correct. I'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Bye-bye. Thanks for watching.